Welcome back to the Raw Selection Private Equity Podcast. Joining us today is Tracie Kelly, Director of Marketing at Excelia, a private equity firm located out of Colorado in the US. Today's discussion is all focused around marketing within the private equity firm. So without further ado, let's dive in. Tracie, if you can share with us a brief insight into you, please.
Thank you, Alex, and thanks for having me this morning. I really appreciate it. So my background has been kind of long. I've been in private equity marketing and origination for a little over 20 years. My job is consistently trying to deliver measurable results, from developing innovative go-to-market strategies to forging high-value partnerships that drive deal flow. Kind of all comes back to deal flow. And then in addition to that, one of the things that I specialize in is creating curated invitation-only experiences designed to foster very meaningful relationships with investment bankers, and then networking, excelling at elevating brand visibility, and cultivating long-term relationships with investors, founders, and advisors.
Okay, appreciate that insight. What's one mistake that you see private equity firms or portfolio companies making, and what would you suggest to correct them?
So a common misstep I've observed among private equity firms is their reluctance to adopt cutting-edge technology within their own operations, despite actively driving digital transformation across their portfolio companies. This paradox, kind of demanding innovation from investments while relying on outdated internal systems, creates inefficiencies, kind of hinders data-driven decision-making, and ultimately limits scalability.
With so you say that it's quite common that we hear from private equity firms that they get a little bit frustrated from a perspective. Quite common that we hear from individuals frustrated that private equity don't invest exactly the same in technology as they encourage their portfolio companies doing. So you're in quite a unique role. There isn't too many people that work in private equity in the marketing sphere within the firm. You mentioned a lot of your role is around deal origination. Just talked about how that differs from somebody in what I regard as a typical deal origination head of business development type role, and why you see it or why your firm sees it from a marketing lens.
Repeat that. I'm sorry. Someone just walked in.
Oh, okay. Do you want me to ask that again?
Yeah.
So, typically within private equity, let's see, where do we go? So typically within private equity, we don't see your job title marketing. You mentioned it comes at it from a business development lens or deal origination lens. Typically we'd see like a head of business development, but that would come from an investment banking world or something similar. So just talk to us about your role in marketing and why that's different from somebody doing a deal origination that's come from what we regard as a traditional route that we see more and more of private equity now.
So at my firm, how they view marketing and business development is it falls under an umbrella called origination. So within origination, you have sourcing of the deals, which would probably be more of the business development side, and then you have the marketing side. But ultimately, sourcing and marketing work kind of hand in hand on sourcing deals. And so we kind of come at it from, I'm I'm creating the brand, I'm helping with the PR, I'm doing the events, but I'm also out there attending the conferences with the BD professionals, helping tell the story of the firm and speaking kind of to their story. And so that kind of helps business development, where we're able to kind of handle business development and sourcing collectively as a team.
Okay. And
It
tell us
also
about
helps differentiate too.
Makes sense. Sorry to interrupt. Just a quick mention of a long-standing partnership with Grata. As you will probably know, the private equity scene is constantly evolving, and deal flow is moving now to proprietary and data-driven processes. Grata provides you with the data and information of over 7 million private companies. So if you're looking to improve your proprietary deal flow and improve the data access, then reach out to Grata today. Now back to the podcast. So tell us about your route into private equity, because marketing isn't a common role that we see in private equity. It's more and more we're seeing it built, and as we see them building, for a better term, choice of better term, back office. But tell us about your path and your route into getting into private equity in the marketing lens.
So 20 years ago, there was no marketing or business development um, within private equity until the private equity firm had raised probably the second or the third fund. Um, I ended up being a temp at a private equity firm 20 years ago during a hiring freeze that my previous firm was undergoing. And so I landed at a firm called KRG Capital that is currently now Mountain Gate. And back in the early 2000s, it was the largest private equity firm in North America, this side of Mississippi. And they had just raised their first fund. They were small. I think the first fund was a little over 200 million. And while I was temping, I realized they didn't have a website, they didn't have collateral, and you have a bunch of finance guys trying to market, their firm. And no offense, but they're not storytellers and they're not marketers. And so I sold them on taking a chance and hiring me as, their director of marketing to lead them, through their fund one, and then we kind of see where it went from there. And I ended up, I think, staying with them through their fifth fund, and I was their 11th employee. So at the end of the day, when I left, I think they went from a $200 million fund one to over 2.5 billion in fund five. So, and then I transitioned. So I left to kind of take a step back, and I had young kids at the time, and two of their partners spun out and formed my current firm, which is Exler Partners. And while I was kind of taking a break, they reached out and said, "Do you really want to leave, or do you want to keep a foot in the door? Because you're good at what you do, and we want you however we can get you in terms of part-time, full-time." And so I kind of kept working with them on the side until I was ready to kind of get back in full-time.
So looking at the work that you're actually doing and diving into that a little bit more detail. So any private equity firms listening that doesn't have your role in the business, why? Maybe not why, but what should they go about if they're thinking about bringing somebody in from an internal, I mean, at the private equity level, marketing? What's some of the things that they would get fixed, they would get repaired, they would get upgraded if they
Mhm.
brought someone like you in, obviously into their business, encouraging more firms to do what obviously your firm and previous firm have done.
So, I mean, private equity firms do use marketing. They just don't have internal marketing. And where I'm kind of as I'm kind of an advantage because I have a relationship with every single member at the firm. So it's much easier for me to help tell their story
Mhm.
and to help differentiate them from other private equity firms. That's kind of the key. You can hire an out sourced marketing firm, but it's still difficult for the outside marketing firm to be able to really get a pulse and a feel for how that firm operates and how they do deals.
I mean, we're a big believer in it. We've got a larger marketing team than a lot of firms, double, treble, quadruple our size. And I think a lot of it's brand awareness. I think if we think about a lot of private equity firms at the moment, differentiation, bringing on different deals and separating themselves rather than just the largest buyer. So certainly marketing and branding is what's going to drive that. Do you do much from an internal perspective around the private equity firm around type content and production of that? Or is yours more around the brand and potentially outreach to originate deals?
So, we do wear many hats. And so, yes, I do work with the team on content creation. Um, I kind of do a little of everything. Now, we do have associates that do deep industry thesis research around the content. And so I'm not doing that research and I'm not kind of delving into that content myself. They're doing the research and providing me with the content. And then I'm taking that content and then creating the story around it.
Makes sense. With from looking at it from a marketing perspective, what's your kind of perspective on private equity as it stands currently, and the current state of play from your lens?
Well, right now, obviously, we're kind of coming off of a real difficult year in terms of deal flow. I think everybody struggled. Deal flow was down. The quality of deals was not kind of what we were used to. Obviously, 2021 was a fantastic year in terms of deal flow and a little unusual in that it really drove the valuations high. And I think everyone is trying to be optimistic about what 2025 will bring from a deal flow perspective. But we're also realizing that seller valuations aren't in line with kind of what the market will bear. And so we're not we're not seeing the deal flow return to normal levels just yet. And what we're hearing is potentially Q2 or Q3. Um, but we just don't know. I mean, that's anybody's guess. One person might tell you it's going to be Q2. Another person's going to tell you it might not even be until 2026. You do have a lot of private equity firms that have been sitting on portfolios that need to liquidate. And so at some point that's going to happen. And that I think will ultimately help the market, is when the portfolio companies start um, being sold.
So, and thank you for that. What are your influences? What do you read? What do you watch? What do you listen to? Tracy, do you recommend that others should check out?
So, Alex, I have started listening to podcasts. My husband is a big podcast listener, and I've never really understood kind of how he finds time to listen to all of them. And so, what I've started doing is, creating a list of podcasts, yours included, that I will kind of set up in the car, and on my 15-minute commute, I try and get in, a part of one, and then I listen to it on the rest on the way home. Um, the books that I'm reading, I have multiple, and these are books that I can kind of go, I can open any of the books at any point and kind of read a chapter, and it's not like I'm not gonna get what's going on. One of them is The Mountain Is You, and that's kind of a roadmap for transforming self-limiting behaviors into opportunities for personal growth. Another one is Ikigai, which is all about finding that balance within your personal life, work, finding out what you're good at. And then the other one is personally on women's development and kind of getting over imposter syndrome and realizing that you have just as much of a right to be, in a conference, at an event, at the sitting at the table than anybody, just having that confidence.
Not only am I the host of the Private Equity Podcast, I'm also the founder and managing partner of Raw Selection. Raw Selection's an executive search firm working exclusively within the private equity industry, supporting the portfolio companies and the private equity firms with securing exceptional talent with our motto of de-risking executive search. That's interesting. Do you find that um, we predominantly see, well, we don't see, we know that predominantly private equities um, mostly male related. Do you find that, it's interesting you reading that book and reference that. Do you find that a lot of women maybe have that challenge of feeling not comfortable within this environment within private equity, which maybe doesn't make it as attractive as we'd like from a diversity perspective?
So I have been in the industry for a very long time, and in the 20 years, 20 plus years that I've been in it, there hasn't been a significant change, and that's one of the items that I would like to see change. Um, Personally, I I don't experience as much as what I've heard other women are experiencing, and that could just be my personality. That I'm very comfortable working with men, just as I am with women, but I don't necessarily notice like when I'm in a meeting and I'm like I'm the only woman. Sometimes I don't even realize that until one of my colleagues will point it out. Where I see it is when you're going to a conference and you walk into the room that you need to network, and it's just a sea of suit jackets and ties. And, it's very intimidating. And it's hard because you can't help but feel a little alienated. And so, what I'm hoping to do is kind of bring awareness, get more younger women that could potentially be interested in M&A so that they know that there is a future and that, it's a pretty good career. And it doesn't have to be on the deal side. It can be on the business development. It can be on the marketing. There's multiple ways.
What do you love about private equity then? What is it that's kept you in this industry for so many years?
Um, I absolutely love the excitement of each and every new investment. So, the areas that we invest in are going to be healthcare, business services, and industrial growth. And so, every week when we're going to IC meeting, you know, we we kind of discuss, all the current deals that we've got in our pipeline, and it's never boring. It's not like you know, okay, so I'll take an example. My husband is in renewable energy. And so that's all he does day in and day out. That's what he sees and he loves it. But, one day I'm looking at a wastewater and water treatment company, and the next I'm looking at a radiology company within healthcare. And so all of the different avenues for me to learn and as a marketer, it's very exciting because my story for them is always going to be evolving. And I need creativity, and that's what helps.
Makes sense. And if anybody wishes to reach out to you post this podcast, Tracy, how best do they get in touch with you, please?
LinkedIn, I'm pretty good at responding, and I'm happy to share that. It's at Tracie Kelly,
Perfect.
and it's within Exceler Partners.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Tracy. We've not had somebody in there. I don't think we've had anybody in the marketing perspective that worked within the private equity firm. So thanks for sharing your insights into private equity. And yeah, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks, Alex. I really appreciate it.
And for everybody listening, thank you very much for tuning in yet again, to the Private Equity Podcast. Till the next time, keep smashing it. And thank you very much for listening.